was, who was this young lady? She was of Asian descent and in an unusual location. We had no missing persons that matched her description. So straight away we knew this was going to be difficult.
In case of solving, some are not harder than others. There's that tenacity and the difficulty because they want a result for the family, they want a result for the public, and they want a result for themselves.
After a couple of days, we got the first lead. Queen Street backpackers advised that, look, the young Asian lady theoretically checked out, but left all the gear behind. Her name was Kayo Matsuzawa.
Kayo Matsuzawa had been in New Zealand for nearly a year. She was due to return home to her family the very next month.
I let her go because she kept reassuring me that New Zealand was a much safer and nicer place than other countries.
She was the kind of person who would make friends with anyone. I think that could be the reason this happened to her.
Any detective that's worked on an unsolved homicide, it's no different. You don't forget it.
Police believe it's never too late to solve a cold case, even after 2 decades. They brought together a specialist team to review some of New Zealand's most haunting unsolved murders. They'll use their skills, expertise and up-to-date technology to look at things with fresh eyes. For those involved in the original investigation, it's a constant torment that the case didn't get solved.
You know, Kayo came to this country just for an adventure. She met her ended up in a full, terrible life. I want you to have to end their days like that.
My question is, why my daughter? Why my daughter?
20 years later, Kayo's killer is still at large.
This is absolutely still solvable. It just needs someone to come to us and say, here's something you didn't know.
What will it take to solve Kayo Matsuzawa's murder?
In 1998, I was employed as a fire alarm compliance tester. The date was the 22nd of September. Auckland City Library and made my way down Queen Street to the Centre Court building. When I came down the stairwell and I went to the door, I see what I thought was a mannequin laying on the floor. There was no clothing whatsoever. The first smell that I was aware of was the smell of ammonia. It became a real vile smell. I went back down the stairs onto Queen Street and I used my phone to call 111.
Mark Fergus was a young detective who'd just been promoted.
At the time I was a sergeant on the General Inquiries team, and once the homicide inquiries kicked off, I was assigned to the OC General Inquiries.
With no clothes or belongings, no cause of death, and at such an isolated location, yet in the heart of Auckland CBD, so close to Queen Street, police started out with no pieces of the puzzle.
Auckland police are appealing for help in identifying an Asian woman found dead in a central city building.
Homicides have always been the any police events, and certainly this was one of those. Especially as it started as a whodunit. There was no obvious leads.
Police immediately started canvassing tourist accommodation for any missing persons.
At the time, we didn't even know the name of the victim. There was no one who went into this thinking this was a 1 or 2 day gig.
The first breakthrough came when police discovered Kayo's luggage at the Queen Street Backpackers. On Friday, 11th of September, she checked in and paid for her room, but she hadn't been seen since.
A missing Japanese tourist may hold the key to the identity of a mystery Asian woman whose naked body was found in Auckland last Tuesday. The tourist, Kayo Matsuzawa, disappeared after she checked into an Auckland backpackers hostel 18 days ago.
Once we had a possible name and a possible lead, we had to connect the person that had been in the backpackers with the victim that we'd found. So what we were able to do was take fingerprints from the property left behind by Kayo Matsuzawa and connect that to the victim that we had in the cupboard. And finally, we were able to confirm from dental records obtained from Japan that Kayo Matsuzawa was indeed the name of the person that we had in the cupboard.
Even as a child, Kayo told her family she wanted to travel the world.
This place, there's a sea and mountains. It's one of the most beautiful places in Japan. Kayo wants to see more of the world.
でもさ、一人で行くって言われた時だから。
We were so worried when Kayo first told us she wanted to go to New Zealand on her own. But she said, I'm not a 17 or 18-year-old girl. I'm nearly 30 years old. I can take care of myself. She kept reassuring us nothing would happen to her. She'd be okay.
Her plan was to learn English in New Zealand. She promised 1 year, no extensions. Then she would come home.
In November 1997, the Matsuzawa family waved goodbye to Kayo as she set off for her year in New Zealand. She headed for Christchurch and enrolled at the Dominion English School, where she met Naomi Saishu.
She was such a happy, cheerful person. Never said a bad word about anyone.
Kayo and Naomi started flirting together in Christchurch and soon realised they had a lot in common and became great friends, making the most of their time together.
This is when we went to Queenstown together to see the autumn leaves. We go shopping together and to any events that were all in Christchurch. We went to the Santa Parade and got so sunburned. A friend said she'd never seen such dark Japanese people before.
Kayo sent regular postcards back home to update the family on her travels.
I decided to come home to Japan on November 4th. So another 3 months to go. You should ask Junichi to buy a birthday cake for you. Take care. Love, Kayo.
Kayo was on track to return home as promised. She just had one more sightseeing trip planned.
I was working at a sushi restaurant at the time and couldn't afford to go with her. But she told me about her plans to go around North Island, and she promised me to send me a postcard. After 10 days, no postcard came, so I did start to wonder. The police showed up at my work and drove me to the station. That's where they told me, but I already knew by then. It must be Kayo.
I'm sure it was September 27th, the morning. I got a phone call from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They said, was this Kayo's home? And they told me Kayo had been victim of a crime and her body had been found. They said they were 99% sure it was Kayo, but they wanted us to come to New Zealand to identify the body to be 100% sure. We had to get passports the next day, but I didn't go to New Zealand. Only my husband and the son. I didn't get to see her body. From the moment I received a phone call, I completely blocked out.
The first thing I had to do was to identify her. It was very hard for me. Yeah, look, any homicide inquiry, being able to personalise it to make it real is really important to the inquiry team. You have a young lady that came to New Zealand that had hopes and dreams and had a livelihood. That was stuff that. So being able to personalise this, to be able to put photos of that we could understand why it was we come to work and doing what we do.
The first thing the investigation team had to do was piece together Kayo's movements.
So Kayo arrived Friday, 11th September. We know from her CCTV coverage that she got on an airport bus and then she got off down the lower end of Queen Street. So she arrived at 4th Street at about 2:15 in the afternoon, checked into the Magnetic very shortly afterwards. She spoke to a couple of staff, set up her room in a really neat, tidy, orderly fashion, and then went out to see the town. And at about 3:30 on that same afternoon, She's glimpsed walking past a CCTV camera in the Countrywide building on Queen Street. That's it. That's all we know. The rest of it's just a mystery.
For the homicide team investigating Kayo's death in 1998, the main focus was the Centre Court building.
The location remains one of the key points in this inquiry. Someone had to be in that stairwell at the time with Kayo and somehow know about the room.
The fact that the body was in there, but someone had to have put it there. She couldn't have got there on her own. I had a darn good look at the body because I thought that I might be called as a witness later on.
So one of the first people we were interested in was Mr. Groves, Dennis Groves, who had found Kayo's body.
All my movements were electronically monitored, and you can't fake that.
At the end of the day, we were satisfied that Dennis's role was simply as he stated, a serviceman going about his duties.
Hundreds of people police looked into.
Any building becomes like a small community. You've got people that live there, they come and go every day. They had an Asian language school. And we know Kayo attended Asian language schools in Christchurch. We had servicemen that were there just to service the life of the building. The lifts, the electrics, the refrigeration, the air conditioning, it goes on and on. There was also public access through the food court and through the tavern downstairs. Every time you open up one lead, it invariably led to something else. People talk about a needle in a haystack. I mean, we didn't even know we were looking in the right haystack to start with. And then you go find a needle.
Wow. After months of interviews with hundreds of people who've been in and out of Centre Court, police were no closer to finding her killer.
We spent a lot of time drawing every clue out of that building. But I still walk away from there going, this could still be something. There is still someone who was in that, well, we know this. There was still someone who was in that building, whose name we don't know, whose face we don't know, that was responsible for the death of Kayo. So that building still has its secrets that it has yet to tell us.
How did Kayo end up in a small utility room in an inner city building? Can a new investigation answer that question? In 1998, the decomposing naked body of Japanese tourist Kayo Matsuzawa was found in a stairwell cupboard of the Centre Court building. 20 years later, no one knows how she got there or who killed her. We've brought together a group of cold case detectives to spearhead a new inquiry. Leading our review will be Detective Inspector Scott Beard, the new officer in charge.
The investigation to the intriguers and to get into that building. What I do, and she was next to and she said that so many knows.
Detective Senior Sergeant Nina Peterson has been 2IC on this case.
It can be challenging between years. We have a mixed investigation technique exchange, forensic technique exchange. If it happens nowadays in 2018, very likely it's solvable.
Fergus is one of the original detectives in the Kayo Matsuzawa case and will provide insight into the first investigation.
Don't bother signing up for homicide inquiry if you think it's going to be a dead end. 2 years later, you're still in cell. You want to see against her look for justice.
3 experts for one cold case. It's time for the Kayo Matsuzawa investigation to begin. Will a new perspective be the key to solving this homicide?
For me, it's the need for those stick to the geometric facts. So no, it's either the speculation, but ultimately we've got to go with what the facts are. Essentially, we're going to have Japanese girl, it's going to cease on the 27th of September 1998. And they were on the stairwell in the part of the building between the Centre Court building and the BNZ building. And then as it went in September, she'd arrived at Auckland, and we just need to build up a picture.
Things got legs. Just the really tight timeframes and all this happening. You know, she arrives at 2:15, she checks in the backpackers, nothing identifies that they're not we get a briefing, CCTV.
Which one was the thing that she's caught on the back camera?
It was interesting to see it too.
today, investigating CCTV plays a huge part because there's so much CCTV.
20 years ago, there was really limited amounts of CCTV. But upstairs, there is the inquiry. So we tasked staff to go to every shop, every location, anywhere, every bank, commercial premise that may have had CCTV to see if we can get some doing something like this, and possibly even future suspects.
Do you reckon that 4th Street to the left on Queen Street, going up Queen Street?
She's also come to us through
Yeah.
and some of the journalists interacted with them.
With no sightings of Kayo after 3:30 that Friday afternoon, the cold case team turned their attention to what Kayo's body can tell them.
Cause of death was never really able to be ascertained due to the state of decomposition.
We don't know how she died. That's not natural for a young female Japanese tourist to be found naked in a mall that is so remote and expensive. Nothing like
That's wrong. Don't follow something. Yeah. Nossa, pá. É muito bom. Põe alto. Long.
DRS now enabled. DRS enabled. Okay, mate, tyres are currently running too hot. Please keep those side temps under control. Okay, mate, I'm afraid we didn't quite get what we needed there, but let's not worry about it. Get your head down now, chin up, and let's focus right till the checkered flag.
Chicken fry.
Establishing the language sources
Minuten.
had made a genuine mistake. The team now focuses on who else could use the system.
Sit down, fucking.
People can access this.
Еще раз перевернусь. Комплексно. Сильно даже не знаю.
Okay, final lap, let's go, final lap.
Ну, все.
Ah, fantastic drive, that's just fantastic. Amazing, you deserved that race win. Well done, mate.
That's a spectacular victory.
Once again,
This is a.
and with that, we wrap up another weekend of motorsport action. But with more races lined up, be sure to.
But like so many leagues before, it was a dead end.
At the end of the day, it was Опять то же самое было.
This is the first time the police have revealed publicly that they have forensic evidence of counterfeit. In 1928, they collected material from Robert Cayer's fingernails, but at the time, forensic testing only showed a DNA belonging to the son.
The difficulty with the song is that
Brian Morgan Smith is the ESI scientist for forensic evidence gathered from the scene.
all the techniques that we've used in the reanalysis of some of the sightings in this particular case is just targeting cells from male embryos. So we've got DNA, which means we can other cellular material that may be contributing in this case. So the process we use is just referred to as RISE TR. So we're looking at ways that we can gain more information from that to potentially bring this.
For Kayo's family, the DNA developments come as a surprise. They never knew about the fingernail scrapings.
This is the first I've heard of it. Is this the suspect's DNA?
Of course, it's great to find out there's a new evidence that might lead to the killer. I think we're one step closer to the offender, so I truly hope this person is arrested.
Can the advances in DNA testing now lead us directly to Kayo's killer? Our cold case experts reviewing the unsolved killing of 29-year-old Japanese tourist Kayo Matsuzawa. For the first time, they revealed that fingernail scrapings were collected from Kayo's body in 1998. However, DNA testing techniques were still very simple.
The fingernail scrapings from Kayo's body could mean that you actually made contact with your finger. She may have even scratched your finger. So
98, 91.
Happened, but there's all these possibilities with fingernail scrapings. The number one hope would be that the last 20 years would come to the point that forensic science that the DNA that's identified and identified.
And Brian Morgan Smith has new information that may help the cold case team.
Чемпионство уже есть.
All the DNA from the deceased, we have obtained some DNA from the fingernails that's found to the scale, which we didn't have back in 1998.
How will that assist the police?
The techniques that we can use now involve just looking at DNA found on the white chromosome, so it's rare DNA. So again, in this case, fingernails still got a lot of over similar to it, but a little extra small material from in this case, male contributors. So we now have some information about those male contributors.
So the YCR testing, you're talking about the male fingernails here?
Yes, the YCR testing just on the white chromosome, which is the male chromosome, but we have identified there's a contributor from male DNA that was found under your fingernails. That's newly been identified.
Well, first of all, that's exciting. But my understanding is that there's still DNA to be found for any person interested.
So YCR DNA scans alone
Stevie just over twice.
A new DNA sample on the suspect.
Stevie.
And then they can do wide DNA testing on that DNA sample against our sample.
Я не обрезался ты вообще.
So then see it. He's not consent through the suspect's structural paper.
Through the court to compel that person to give us DNA to do the testing.
This is one of the most significant developments in Kyan's case in 20 years. If the suspect's DNA had been matched with the
О,
material,
да нет, слишком просто.
it proved she
Я
had
кислота нет.
this man.
Не хочу.
Yeah, it is exciting, but the years are, they come back to us with, it's exciting. It's, will it lead to prosecution and inspection? I'd like it to.
Задолбал.
We do rely on expertise.
Правильно, это просто. Киньте мне что-то, и ты делал.
This is a postcard telling us she had been booked up a bit. Thank you so much for the support. And it's much colder here than expected, but it's such a beautiful place. Everyone here is so calm.
What an atmosphere we've got. The fans have been here since...
Please don't feel too much over to you and take good care of yourself.
Все, он же боевой друг.
Because the case of the unexpected of the building, police must continue to investigate the prospect.
Ну, быстрый друг.
Now it's a brand new interconnect accident that concerns.
Неправильно, не боевой, быстрый друг.
Appeared to be trustworthy. His
Well,
challenge
that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry. We'll be back tomorrow.
be okay.
You know, if you're looking at some kind of way of making it compliant, the drinks bucket is a different one. This is not a person who is his first time committing crime.
If we're moving down that trail, then it's premeditated. Yeah. So there's a sexual connotation to it.
Yeah.
So did we look in our databases in terms of sex offenders? Yes, we had criminal profiling back in 1998, but in 2018.
Back in the 60s, Mexico City would host off the back of and striding into our commentary box to join us today, the man.
The suspect list was messy. And the other thing is, the suspect may already even be the original suspect list. So that maybe the suspect list was 20 years ago, that since then has had offended with a very similar note.
In 1998, the case generated a huge number of public phone calls as people offered up persons of interest they felt police should look into. And police have continued to receive new information.
Late DRS will be enabled this lap. You can use it when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. Okay, mate, we've got some clear track around us now, so let's use it and make this next lap a quick one. Let's go. Yes, mate, we hit the target. Nice work. Okay, so we're leading our teammate by 27.5 seconds. Final lap, push, push. Oh, fantastic drive. That's just fantastic. Amazing. You deserve that race win. Well done, mate. Not just victory today then, but the championship as today's winner. Well, that was certainly an exciting weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for more exciting
Ой, сори, забыл микрофон.
Фигня. У тебя поприкольней браслет. А, слушай, да. У меня там просто 2 тряпочки буквально. Да. Просто 2 тряпочки. А где человечки? Тут же...
Опять останови.
Фига какая прикольная
Мартин,
штука.
опять.
Это вешать на всякие, на пеналы. А, типа брелок. Да, это брелок такой. Но это хотя бы функционально. Да, но вот это вот то, что тебе попалось, конечно. Вот, смотрите, ребят, вот, тут же есть человечки. Где человечки? Где человечки? Вот это? На тряпочке, брат.
So, good news and bad news. The good news is the meeting went well. The bad news
Смотрите, вот
your
эта вот
current employers
штучка,
don't
она
love it,
должна
and they are
надеваться на
thrilled.
шнурок.
Get ready to rock
Я не знаю,
this
я
might
как
set back your recognition with them a bit.
это не игрушки.
Вот человечек, кстати.
4
Это
этапа
не человечек.
Это фигня полная. Блин, меня расстраивает то, что они положили наклейку и под наклейку подставили под площадку. Могли бы сами это сделать.
Короче, ребят, мы вот сейчас последнюю парочку вскрываем игрушек от Джоя. Человечек. Спасибо. Ну, это дурак или это реально прикольнее вообще, чем все вот это?
Это все, что мы сейчас рассказали?
Да.
Не считая животных.
Ну, не считая животных.
Не считая животных, да. Хоть что-то.
Хоть что-то. Ну, не, ну, это вообще из серии Макси, они вообще классные, вот эти вот фигурки, они хорошие.
Okay, mate, I'm pleased to say that our new parts have come through without any issues, so they'll be on the car, ready for the
Эта
next
серия,
race.
это реально, типа, собери себе конструктор, собери себе функциональные штуки, собери себе вот эти вот обвесы. А кому нужны обвесы, если хочется поиграть в игрушки? Вот эти вот игрушки из простого киндера с животными, они же прям вообще топовые.
А что, все кончились?
Киндер Джой, да. Ну, вот просто взял несколько штучек, заценить, что там вообще за игрушки лежат. Ну, дресня. Итак, ребята, с Джоями мы разобрались. Игрушки там были так себе, какие-то такие обычные коллекции из обычных яиц, как будто поприкольнее. Но давайте подводить какие-то итоги. Пока мы собирали полную коллекцию вот этих зверушек, у нас накопилось 2 полные тарелки шоколада. Я даже его вот так вот приминал. Сейчас давайте выясним, какая игрушка самая редкая, а какая игрушка самая распространенная. Я предлагаю сейчас всем собрать это все не вот в 2 армии, а вот в одну армию, посмотреть, каких больше всего.
It's a Saturday showdown.
Итак, то получается, что у нас самый редкий это страус. Он нам попался один единственный из 27 штук. Далее идут сурикаты, 2 штуки, крокодилы, 3 штуки, тапиры, белки и оленята по 4 штуки, черепахи и слоны по 5 штук. Потом у нас медведи и львята уже по 8 штук. Пингвины тоже 8 штук, 9 бегемотиков, 10 уток и 11 коал. Фу. Что ж, ребят, вот такой получился ролик. Не забывайте ставить лайки, подписываться на канал. Спасибо вам большое за просмотр, ребят. Всем пока-пока.
Всем пока.
Пока-пока. Ржешь едет. Ого!
Ну сюда. Респаж на меня. Очень красивый. Кулери.
Ну, что-то сравнимое.
Это я. Огромное количество еды. Но на канале МЧС нельзя просто сесть и поесть. Поэтому сегодня все далеко не так просто, как кажется на первый взгляд. Перед вами 20 конвертов, 20 видов самой различной еды. А самое мерзкое, чтобы вы понимали, мы сегодня взяли тухлое мясо акулы. Только представьте, какой будет сегодня уровень. Для самой вкусной, например, бургер. Короче, еда очень разнообразная.
Также у нас есть наше любимое колесо фортуны, на котором изображены деньги. От $1 до $1000. Общая сумма денег на этом колесе составляет $1915. И чтобы этот ролик получился максимально крутым, эмоциональным и жестким, мы с пацанами скинулись. То есть, понимаете, да, сейчас каждый из нас очень сильно хочет вернуть свои деньги обратно и выиграть еще что-нибудь сверху. Но что-то мне подсказывает, что сегодня кто-то уйдет с вот такой котлетой денег, такой, а кто-то уйдет с пустым карманом. Так, как же будет происходить сегодняшняя игра? Участник садится за стол и выбирает любой конверт. Например, конверт номер 5. И официант тут же выносит это блюдо. После чего я вращаю колесо фортуны, и, допустим, мне выпадает, ну, пусть $1. Это значит, что я должен съесть это, и мне дадут $1. То есть я выиграю $1. Если там находится банка колы, то все шикарно, или мармеладка. Это круто. Но что если внутри находится сюрстрёмель? Тухлая, плевотная, невероятно мерзкая рыба, и это не стоит $1. Но выбора-то нету, потому что либо ты съедаешь и получаешь $1, либо ты уходишь, деньги сгорают, и все, и ты покидаешь соревнования. Короче, отказываться нельзя. Но если вам этот ролик очень сильно понравится, то отказать вам во второй части я точно не смогу. Просто возьмите ваш палец, возьмите курсор мышки и нажмите на красную кнопочку «Подписаться». Только так мы сможем понять, что вам этот ролик действительно понравился. А если вы еще наберете под роликом 150 тысяч лайков, то мы сделаем вторую часть просто нереально жесткой. Ну а участниками сегодняшнего челленджа будет, как всегда, Майк Суда, Ромарио, Ваня, ну и, конечно же, я. Так, Оксана, нам сегодня с вами придется вообще так фига поесть, поэтому предлагаю, как мы разобьемся, а то потом зло вообще не будет. Давайте. Что если мы устроим побег-челлендж? Кто первый сможет выбраться из оков, побеждает. Окей, а что будет призом? Сражение мы можем продолжить в игре Rise of Kingdoms, стратегической игре с многоцивилизационной тематикой. Победитель побег-челленджа сможет выбрать понравившуюся себе нацию и сразиться с оппонентами в настоящей схватке. Туда погнали, да? Так, ну что, давай, бери, погнали. Сюда! Сюда! Есть! Руки есть! О! Сюда! 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 Туда, только сюда! Сюда! Есть! Сюда! Цивилизацию Рима. Римская империя господствовала в Средиземном море более 1000 лет. В Rise of Kingdoms я могу познакомиться с Римом в период его расцвета. С увеличением марша войск на 5% я могу завоевать весь мир в кратчайшие сроки, как и моя скорая жизнь. А я беру викингов. Нет цивилизации столь сильной, чтобы остановить вторжение викингов. С бонусом атаки 5% и бонусом контратаки 3% мы пройдем по землям Англии, Франции, Северной Германии и даже посетим Италию. Викинги самые крутые. Да. А я выбираю британскую цивилизацию. Британские лучники имеют сильнейшее подавление огня на дальних расстояниях. И они обладают историей отражения атак сотен тысяч воинов. В Rise of Kingdoms Англия имеет 5% бонусов атаки лучников. Так что ваши армии будут поражены, но еще до того, как увидят меня. Так, хорош спорить, давай. Давай. Двигайся.
Danny denies ever going to Paul Club, which links the team back to the person of interest with the family match.
We do know that his whereabouts on 26 of May are unknown. When it's on 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. And then the following day, he was still feeling cool.
The link to Paul Club is important, but it's even more compelling if the stronger person of interest undercut at this time around Jane's disappearance.
What?
Давайте я буду выбирать. Второй. Это не... Это интегрирует, что я это чувство.
Today I will set some 131 or 100. Meticulous is the records of your money and stuff that do always do money. Every financial transaction has been recorded to some extent in diary. It tells us how much you paid for cars, people, the car that's broken down, that was broken. Obviously, there was no car that has been taken off them.
That's right, well, significantly, of course, she passed what was the ultimate death with something of a crossbow incident. You have this really intriguing sort of incident where he wonders the crossbow incident.
So that could also be another reason for whatever.
The cold case team believe the crossbow incident is significant. It was only 5 months before Jane's disappearance and marks the start of escalating tensions between Jane and her friends and a group of people who are of interest to the inquiry.
Told you, I don't have your car.
Our person of interest is central to that plot to take Carl Settings, and that starts a series of events which you see sort of unfold not only over that day and night, but also has a flow-on.
Yeah, 4th of March 1993, she writes, Shannon rang up and told me to tell Danny he wasn't welcome around there anymore.
It appeared to aggravate their relations. We know that because the gangs now were involved,
the heavies went round.
And alongside me in the commentary box today, a man who
they're dead.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Going
ё-моё! Что тут походу? Ты меня?
Doing what we call now home invasion.
Let's speak up because she was a woman. That's very proud. We think he's shit. She's real. I don't think anyone can handle real. She's just things since then. It's a girl. It's
You want to a little bit out of your league, dealing with violent people, gang members. You wonder whether they knew what they were doing. We know that she paid money to people. One of those people may have gone a step too far. From all the statements we've taken, all the witnesses that was interviewed, you never see that that death pale
compared to the fact that where she was found. And then link it to that person who's linked to the group of people around that death, and it's that possible line in the sand.
And he's a new person. Fixed connection
on that.
Had the team uncovered a perfect storm? A person of interest with an unresolved question against Jane and the connection to her couple. 17-year-old Jane Phillips was last seen walking on Auckland's K Road in 1993. The mother's remains were only discovered after years of severe erosion exposed to the resting place. The cold case team now turn their attention to what was in the grave.
We've got the benefit of found in the roadside, or we know what's there or what's missing, in which only the code will know. Investigatively, that's really, really important.
Obviously, Jane's remains were found in the grave, and it was the items that were found in the grave with her. And some of the items that weren't, that have given the investigations a really solid base that we have to hold very closely to our chest.
Jane was last seen in an outfit she'd typically wear to work.
Danny states that Jane was wearing a black long-sleeve lacy top, black cotton short mini skirt, a black high-heel shoe, brown leather jacket with tassels on the arms.
But she also had a change of clothes with her.
In 1993, Danny further states that Jane put into her canvas bag her jeans and a black Jack Daniels t-shirt.
It was very interesting, the items that in the grave that seemed to be heavily to the waging technology and all that, but we looked at this and working screens to help us identify the people saying it's extremely.
I'm clicking, literally I'm clicking all some very confusing items. It wasn't readable what identified.
Unwilling to compromise the investigation, the team will not divulge everything found with Jane. However, the detectives, at the very first time, prepared to reveal significant detail.
Within the tangled mess, we were able to identify approximately 8 items of interest that would potentially help to identify what clothing and what Jane had with her at the time that she went missing. It was very unusual. It's not a sort of case that we encounter regularly at ESR. We probably are involved in body recoveries only maybe once a year, and very rarely are we involved in body recoveries where the person has been dead for decades. I could see there were threads, there were overlapping threads, there was indications of sewing, there was indications of elastic. It was just a matter of just laying everything out, looking to see what matched the overlapping pattern. We were able to identify that there was a t-shirt present. We had the manufacturer's tag at the top, which highlighted the area where the neck is, and we also obviously had the sleeves and the body of the shirt.
The painstaking forensic analysis of the gravesite has given us an inventory of what she had with her when she was buried.
Will identifying these items be the key to solving this cold case? The black t-shirt certainly opens up the investigation's timeline.
She definitely has got changed at some stage.
And I guess that really raises that question of what actually happened to her between that time she was in K Road and to the time that she ended up at Fort Waikato.
Yeah, definitely, I mean, when was she buried?
When did she have the opportunity to change the clothes? And over what time frame are we looking at?
Jane was wearing her favourite leather jacket when she was last seen, but it's missing from the gravesite.
They were separated from her during the process of transporting her from the city to Port Waikato. If somebody keep her as a keepsake or even handle it on.
Well, I need to get it off your chest at some stage. You want to go and do your deed, do with it on your conscience.
Police need to know the fate of Jane's leather jacket. Now the team has established what was buried with Jane and what's missing, they review the timeline and discover a sighting that up to now has never been fully corroborated.
So Amanda and Jane are working up there. Amanda gets that job. When she comes back, Jane's gone. That's around about 8:30, isn't it? Everything after that becomes a little bit grey for us. I've got several witnesses who said that she's run into one of these parlours. I think it was Adam and Eve. She's running scared from somebody. That somebody was chasing her.
Although in 1993 K Road was a very dangerous place, this sighting has always seemed unlikely because it was quite a distance from Jane's cage.
The Reynolds girls, in between Reynolds and McDonald's, that was our spot on that side of the road. At the infamous three, Natasha, Jane and Amanda.
Everybody out here knows that there's a risk they're taking, but it's
a risk that we willing to take.
Jane and her group of very young prostitutes worked on an area between Queen Street and Mercury Lane outside Rendles, 500 metres along with a completely different set of women. Jane and her associates were welcome there because there had been previous conflict between some of the older women that worked at the other end of K Road and them.
In 1993, not only did it seem unlikely that Jane was at the other end of K Road, there were also differing reports as to who was running.
There was some confusion over whether it was in fact Jane's friend Natasha that was actually the one who had been chased.
Which then was a little bit confused at the time as to who actually saw who.
Natasha Hogan and Jane were very similar build, and obviously tied in a similar way, so were often mistaken.
But sadly, Natasha was killed shortly in 96, and she couldn't speak to her again, which was very sad.
Fellow sex worker Natasha Hogan was never able to clear up the confusion because 3 years after Jane went missing, she was murdered by serial killer Kevin Porter. However, on review, the 1993 file clearly shows that Natasha had spoken to police about the incident.
She had the same story about Jane running into the Adam and Eve. It could only have been Jane because Natasha would have been speaking about herself.
And now the team uncover another witness to corroborate Jane's claim.
Sometime later, we had a third person that was also working in that location and was able to pretty much tell us the same story.
She gave a statement to us saying that Jane ran into the parlour and asked to be hidden. And she gave her name to her as Jane. Then the two heavies coming in to the parlour and asking for the person that ran into the parlour. And then they went off, and obviously then Jane fled from the parlour, and that was the last sighting.
Between that particular witness and the other two, it was frustrating that that particular line in 1992 wasn't followed through.
They've actually been tied up that obviously as to where she was, what she was wearing at that time and all that both.
With 3 first-hand accounts of Jane running scared that night, police believe the sighting of Adam and Eve is highly credible. But it still leaves the question, why had Jane strayed so far from her usual territory on Hill Road? 17-year-old Jane Furlong has been dead now for longer than the short life she was allowed. But after 26 years, police have uncovered new information that could bring some justice for Jane and her friends and family.
Still wondered to this day why her mother was in the same position as her, working on the same street, well, with the same people, on the same drugs. Maybe if we find out why she was killed, this makes sense. Until then, nothing makes sense.
Police have always believed the last sighting of Jane Furlong was around 8:30 in the evening, standing outside Rendles, where she usually worked. But after re-examining the file, there's now strong evidence of a later sighting, 500 metres away, of Jane running scared from someone who was chasing her. But what was she doing at that end of town on someone else's porch?
When the men came into the parlour, I had to find them, and the witness asked them why they wanted her. They said that Jane owed them money to drive. And we know of Jane's drug habits through the diary, and she owed money to various people. It was also alleged that she owed money to a person of interest as well.
That comes with his own statement.
And of course, it was led for this particular location in that cafe.
Because he used to frequent the in-between cafe.
The in-between cafe was in the same block as the Adam and Eve massage parlour where Jane ran to hide.
A couple of the witnesses that we spoke to had indicated that Jane had started frequenting the in-between cafe. We know that our person of interest would often stop in at places like the in-between cafe, in his own words, to play video games. So having Jane up that sort of area of K Road, I guess it puts them on a collision course at some point. You've got a person who's very much at the centre of the loose group of associates around Danny and Jane, also connected to what we know as the crossbow incident.
And
yeah.
Fresh eyes allowed the cold case team to draw a series of strong connections to one person of interest. Could the new links finally lead to Jane's killing?
She wouldn't back down, she would fall. Circumstances could have easily spiraled out of control. Jane was no shrinking model. She would stand up to most people, foolishly probably believing that other people had her back. I don't think they did.
For someone who was so small, she had a lot of guts, and she knew what she believed in, and she had the right sense of things. She wasn't an arsehole. We just were surrounded by assholes. So what frustrates me about this case is that we have this person of interest with a hetero connection. We have that time zone that everyone accounted for between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. that night. We know that there's people out there that hold information back and still unwilling to speak to us about that person.
At some point, you just wonder whether that sort of that burden of holding with that information will get a little bit too much. Been a few that have refused to engage with us. Some of them we've interviewed have given us a certain amount of information, but some questions haven't been prepared to open up to us.
The team believe there are still witnesses out there who haven't disclosed all they know of Jane's disappearance or who's around her at the time.
She was a human being. She was a young, intelligent woman. You look at her diary, you can see she's crying for help. Just a few days before she disappeared, she writes, "I've tried to be good, I'm nice to everyone. I've never mucked anyone around, yet everyone shits on me. I hate life. Why can't I be loved?"
How much do you think of being around the whole time? Every day? Do you cry much at all?
It's 25 years it's been going on.
Yes. Wow.
So,
Really?
a lifetime.
Yeah, but really?
I was only 43 and now I'm nearly 70. There, right there.
I regular contact with Judith, Jane's mother. It would be a great deal of satisfaction to be able to give her some sort of closure on the booze.
She wanted to get off the street. She had found a different way. Like these days, you can do free courses. If she could have done a free course with child psychology and raise a child, she would have done that. And I'm really sure she could have. I'm sure she would have been a great psychologist.
Who knows what would have happened to Jane in the years if she had lived. One thing I can say is that a mother would have had a daughter and a son would have had a mother. And their lives, because of it, would have been different.
Even for the detectives who worked on Jane's case time and again, there's the nagging disappointment of not being able to solve this.
This is the frustration for me. I've now retired, and there's been a frustration of mine not being able to finalise this case.
Collated a very strong investigative case with the right people coming forward. I truly believe that this case can be solved. Sort of thing.
I remember driving to the scene the first time, and I was completely bewildered by where I was going. I was just struck by how remote the area was.
In 1998, 3 days after Christmas, the body of a man was discovered on an isolated beach. It appeared he had been shot execution style.
Everything was a complete mystery. Nothing was known. Who was this man? How did he come to be there? How did he get there? Where was he killed? We have no answers to any of those questions.
Fingerprinting revealed the man was 25-year-old David John Robinson. His parents hadn't seen him in 8 years.
We've always wanted reconciliation. We never stopped trying. Never.
To lose a loved one in a violent way is life-changing and devastating. As a detective, you're really just working hard to make sure that you get the result.
David Robinson was antisocial. He was a loner. He liked isolation. And for those reasons, we struggled to get a picture of David.
2 decades on, police believe it's never too late to solve a cold case. But it's imperative to consider things differently.
There has been a lot of talk over the years. Someone out there knows what has happened to David.
We've brought together a specialist team to review some of New Zealand's most haunting unsolved murders. They'll use their skills, expertise and up-to-date technology to look at evidence with fresh eyes. For those involved in the original investigation, it's a constant thought that the case didn't get solved.
These types of investigations, they take its whole way on. You look at what you did, what you should have done better. You scrutinize your investigation, and it stays with you.
20 years later, David's killer still hasn't been held to account.
It's a very callous way to have
Ответ то, что решила купировать пират.
someone has had to have a cold heart to be able to do something as extreme as that.
What will it take to
Кент
solve
отбивалась
David
на базу,
Robinson's
которую
murder?
войска тоже пока не взяли.
On December 28,
Во многих сценариях можно вызывать на помощь других героев. Но помните, при этом расходуется дополнительный ресурс. Давайте вызовем Галине, чтобы он помог нам разыскать Ленор. The first officer approached the body. The deceased was in a state of decomposition. He knocked the body, was face down, the footwear on one side off the edge of his son, building out the elements, turning the body over, and it was at that point that he saw that David had a gunshot
with the body in an advanced state of decomposition, identifying the man was a huge challenge.
Homicide inquiries challenged to doing this in the first 36 hours of this investigation. Everything was a complete mystery. So we had to start piecing together the vital information. It was quite evident that David had been dead for some time.
Police say the victim probably died from a single bullet wound. He'd been shot in the centre of the forehead.
Only 2 fingers were suitable for fingerprinting, but they proved crucial. On December 30th, the man was identified as David Robinson.
Car pulled up in a helicopter and asked who I was, and then asked me if I had a son called David John Robinson and could I give his birth date. And then he couldn't say it any other way, but I'm sorry to tell you this history, but his son has been found dead on a remote beach out of Topatika. And he proceeded just to tell me that he'd been murdered. It was complete disbelief.
Because David had lost contact with his family, the original investigators started to build a profile based on his criminal history.
He was quite timid. He was unemployed. He didn't draw a benefit of any sort. He lived hand to mouth by water game from petty crime, thefts. He was capable of walking big distances, doing 30 or 40 kilometres a day. He likes to be left alone.
Самолет Леноры рухнул на той стороне пропасти. Надо спасать ее.
So he was a difficult man to track for those reasons.
It was devastating for David's parents, who had always hoped their son would return to them.
He wasn't a ceremony. He was a typical Filipino. He was just nice. He was friendly. He was outgoing with people when he was injured. He often took their children to the bush and shop for food. He loved production. But maybe it rubbed off from his.
It's a movie that's big and thick. Oh, ridiculous. Nuts. It was good honestly.
Right from an early age, David had behaviour issues, and that never improved further. David had been stealing from about 7 years old.
If he saw it and nobody was there, they lose it. Didn't matter who it was and what it was.
When he was 11, unfortunately, there was a bully at the school, older than Davey, and that made it terribly difficult for the boy.
As a teenager, David became withdrawn and his behaviour only deteriorated.
He tried everything. He didn't like school. He hated authority. He hated having to be accountable to authority. He just hated it.
At 17, David left home. His parents equipped him with camping gear and sent him off with their blessing.
We encouraged him to ring us, I don't care what time. We don't ever lose touch. He knew that we liked him, and he knew we cared.
But it didn't take long for him to come to police attention. And by his early 20s, David's convictions were starting to stack up.
He was arrested many times for petty crime. He would steal food, money, steal from cars, committing these crimes so he could live day to day.
He might ring us at 8 or 9, 10 at night. I never knew where from, but he only ever told us where he wanted us to know, which was nothing. He'd become a vagabond in a sense and was just moving around.
David made his way to the South Island, where he was arrested in late 1997 and spent some time in jail in Invercargill.
While in custody, David confessed to dozens of burglaries. He wrote to his parents from jail, but they would never send him. On December 28, 1998, he was discovered shot near Bald Head.
22 clubs killed otherwise overhead in a very simple position and flew quite horizontally to the back of the skull, killing him. That has all hallmarks of being an aimed shot.
David's body was removed within hours, and the full scene examination could begin.
In 1998, I was working as a detective sergeant. The 31st of December, I was asked to look at the crime scene examination. We travelled down certain gates and across creeks and through a lagoon, and then all of a sudden we were out in the Bald Head part of the beach. It was a challenging area of terrain. The area consisted of shell cases and evidence. We gathered in 6 to look at the development stage in order to try and establish how long David had likely been in that area. We believe that he could have been literally dumped there by the surf.
The initial pathology report suggested David had been on the beach for around 2 weeks, so police tried to piece together his last movements.
Foremost police have begun a door-to-door canvass of the lost and shore into the murder of Nicholas and Robinson. We appealed for signs through radio, TV, the challenge for us was to understand that whilst this is the way David chose to go through from petty crime, there's a that is death was proven, and that we all have a responsibility for someone in the communities killed by that.
Dozens of people came forward with
Да,
possible
серии будет ходить через 2, может, не знаю.
particular areas in the weeks leading up to his death. Officers started to look for evidence of any of his points.
Overall, I think there was about 15 campsites that were any rappers that were left. We would look at we could link them. We looked at
being building badges that he was looking to rip off cannabis growers.
Cannabis growing was rife on the remote west coast, and growers were known to protect their plots at any cost.
There were a number of people who became suspects because they had the profile of someone capable of this level of violence. Some of those suspects, they were also known to be commercial cannabis growers.
But aside from a possible motive, police had no real evidence to link any of the suspects to David's brutal killing.
Suspicion is a useful tool in terms of proving the murder to the highest standards. You were well short. For me, it was very frustrating we weren't able to answer a lot of the questions, but we weren't able to narrow down.
Вы нашли аэродром. На аэродромах создаются летающие боевые единицы, в том числе грузовые дирижабли. Их можно использовать для транспортировки войск.
David Robinson. Where was he killed?
Обратите внимание, шаттлы грузовой дирижабль двигаются навстречу друг другу. Так будет продолжаться до тех пор, пока шаттл не окажется на борту.
In 1998, David Robinson was found dead on a remote South Island beach, killed by a single gunshot.
Итак, шаттл сел в грузовой дирижабль. Давайте перевезем его через пропасть.
Beatles!
To see it through the eyes of the victim and parents and people who have suffered for 20 years.
We brought together a group of cold case specialist detectives to spearhead a new inquiry. Leading our review will be Detective Senior Sergeant Jackie Corner, the new officer in charge of the case.
I think it's really important when we start to really look at an investigation that
Чтобы высадить шаттл, выделите дирижабль и нажмите кнопку «Выпустить все».
you want to be able to have a fresh pair of eyes. I'm really hoping to be able to get some answers for David's parents.
Detective Sergeant Chris Powell will provide insight into the original investigation.
We got subject based on the best information I can.
В обмен на нашу помощь Ленора согласилась вместе с нами сражаться с Томом. В знак доверия она передала мне чертежи пиратских дирижаблей.
Detective Sergeant Brent Lyford is the 2IC on this case. He's been reviewing the file and visiting some interior results.
Beatles needs still need to be answered. It's that's failed and it's huge.
Ленора многое рассказала. Смерть Петрусу поразила даже пиратов. Похоже, тоже есть отношение пирата есть класса, который местным жителям не нравится. Погибель небес, который сейчас тоже позволит блокировать пиратов самостоятельно.
Тоже построил хорошо укрепленную базу, чтобы взять ее, воспользоваться новейшими науками, научными исследованиями и технологиями Линча.
Too hard. Что же там надо? Ну, понятно, говорю.
Per colpire neitrali corpo, e sono stati utilizzati l'acqua per il studi di tutti i conservatori per studi economici e coaching esterni.
Great work. That's a new fastest lap of the race. Okay, mate, final lap. Keep your concentration and let's bring it home.
Jeszcze palnie mam to sobie głośno, jak tam muzyk stopnie nie wyjść.
Yes, yes, come on, we're on the podium. Good job this weekend. That's a great drive. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
And on review of the pathology,
So that wraps up the sprint race, but there's still
information that makes suicide even less likely and has never been revealed publicly until now.
Also have a large shell fracture that radiates from the resources down to the back of his head.
You have to be positioned by that, charges out, or side out. There's nothing.
It's a Saturday showdown. Any fancy something?
So it's certainly
adds a different dynamic to what was previously thought.
It's a bit of good news to me that needs to be looked at. It's different set that party.
Zresztą same.
Whatever happened in this party could be a vital piece of the puzzle in the cold-blooded murder of Tina. Cold case detectives were investigating the 1998 death of David Robinson. He was killed by a single gunshot to the forehead.
This is about where David was found. One of his first officer had become to be here. This was when two brothers
DRS is being enabled this lap. You can use DRS when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone.
That's quite straightforward because it's too of bread.
That was the fastest lap of the race. Keep this up. Well done. Okay, mate. Tyres are running hot, mate. Tyres are running hot. Please keep the temps down if you can. Okay, mate. That still wasn't quite what we needed, I'm afraid. But look, let's move on. Get your head down and chin up and focus till the end of the race. Good job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far.
Начинаю. Еще нет.
Okay, mate, this is the final lap of the race. Final lap.
It was also shows that this particular unusual technique which made race get a good time while even techniques as well.
Thank you for this very much. I don't remember reading about
Fantastic drive, that's just fantastic. Amazing, you deserve that race win. Well done, mate. That's a spectacular victory. Here comes today's... After an event like that, who knows what
the chances there of finding a surrogate indicate to me that he has been limited time.
Whether David came from north or south of the sea, the team now believe he 20 years on, with the team closing in on the area of David's homicide, will they now be able to narrow down the date of his murder and will it put them any closer? Our cold case experts are reviewing the unsolved murder of 25-year-old David Robinson, who was found dead near Bald Head in late December 1998. Almost 2 weeks later, David was buried in a family...
500.
A very painful day because it was a day of closure in a sense for John and I because we never reconciliated with our son the way that we had always wanted to be. That was...
На пятом висели.
Yes.
Что-то вообще провал. Конструкторов. Да, вообще какая-то жесть. Вообще провал. Концовка сезона. Да. Вот коварный учитель. Рик Буллок называется. Вот он, 22-й. Португалия. Ну, фон был. Или не было. Такая. А, ну, кругов. Всего. Всего. А, вина.
One of the larvae collected from David's body came from the Seneca flora line, which was considered extremely unusual. in the past, that particular fly wasn't known to lay on human corpses.
The blowfly itself hasn't been found on human bodies before the second major Silicophora. It usually breeds the decaying seafood. David's body must be to be able to.
Now practice is over, qualifying awaits.
Long enough to not smell like human flesh to the bone.
Ah, non puedo ver dentro. Veo. Todo troppo questo. Non si può. Ma me se lo sto dicendo. Poi traffico di stare. Ma sto però ma che stare Еще пусто на 15. Быстро.
With qualifying wrapped up now, we have our grid line up for the...
Чего? 18? 17. Чуть-чуть осталось. Осталось чуть-чуть. Шансы есть. Чуть-чуть осталось.
3 independent groups, potentially saying something.
But who killed him remains to be answered.
Are we still happy that the motives and the burglaries or the dishonesty stealing to
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Brown lines up on pole position and alongside me in the commentary box.
Just how often they take them out of
Сейчас вот такой отрыв. Relax, тут да. Скотовым. Beleza, pessoal. Puxa. Parece que é puxado. Думаю, изучили. И все. Порвался. На 4 результатом.
Okay, DRS will be enabled for this lap. You can use it when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone.
Science?
Police have been investigating because we separated 17 sections and the
Perdeu, Pedro. Portugal, speaking. Picking up Shane's one. No problem. Oh, yeah.
Great work, that's a new fastest lap of the race. Okay, mate, right, we've got some clear track in front of us, so let's make the best use of it and make the next lap a quick one. You got this.
Vamos mostrar.
Okay, no issues with the tyre wear now. Keep taking care of them. Nice work, you smashed it. Really good job on hitting that target, Gap to your teammate behind, 30.6 seconds. Okay, you've just started the final lap of the race. Final lap. Ah, fantastic drive, that's just fantastic, amazing, you deserved that race win, well done mate.
Освобожди.
Not just victory today then, but the championship.
David's fractured skull.
Once again, it's podium time. It's been an absolutely wild weekend of Formula One action, and I can't wait to see what's next.
Ой, строблю. Это лидер. Марк попытался обогнать. Для шансов.
And it's not just David's love, it's what David's.
We've had the public key for us in solving this investigation. So it'd be nice, and so that's what we need.
This case gets solved because everybody's getting solved. Чисто.
Ну, такой способ шпарить.
Police are getting the only gift to the Katrina Jeffries of Hillsborough. She gave a bit of sleep for some of the what's really awful. People she was pain associated with people. You know, there's no cases then, which are cases. Where I brings justice. It's the statement of family. But police believe it's in the church to separate from the case. However, it's a family responsibility. We want to be able to specialist to organize use their skills, expertise, and technology to the missions. This is a sort of thing. What will it take to solve the Miller and Katrina Jeffries? July 2005, the new Party was living by the end of the second it's been a strong competition for myself. So, from a certain point of view, so you know, it's drug girls dispatched and the officers feeling that had a body of female to be used to treat. Police are investigating the death of Ms. Bush in the northern suburb of Hillsborough. Police had to use a helicopter to retrieve the bodies without a bag.
We consist of conditions according to the position. But just that first view of the witness even the ship in Felix
Just, you know, going to the floor or something. Just wasn't able to keep it, so I just didn't okay.
E confiscavano, se sono dei risorse.
So yeah, the last time I saw her, she just wanted to see it.
So
Katrina was the middle child of the family of three, and her childhood was marked by spending
Yeah, she's like this, you know, best friend that I've made. Still very sweet. Just genuine and honest.
But growing up, Katrina was not.
She could give everybody a training.
It came as a shock to me. She had told me in high school that she was going to leave.
Without an education, Katrina found the real world struggle.
She seemed to go uninformated and anxious and worried, and she spent a lot of time up her room listening to music and didn't really socialise with anyone.
We had gone out on the slow night. I'd really noticed the change this time. She was wearing a hoodie, but she always had pulled out, and I noticed her skin, you know, had really gone downhill, and she just kind of was just hiding herself and didn't really want to be seen.
She always wore a hat and she pulled it down over her eyes. It affected her life. She liked the night time better because no one can see her in the night time.
Adding to Katrina's strength was the loss of her older brother Ben.
Ben drowned in '99 in the sea when he was on holiday with his friend. Katrina was really devastated when he died.
I knew how much she looked up to her big brother Ben and how close they were. And she was really hurt talking about it.
She didn't care about herself after that.
She just, I guess the best way of putting it is she didn't see me.
Unbeknownst to her mother, Katrina turned to alcohol.
I didn't see it coming personally from that drinking so much. I was actually quite shocked why she did that. And then I realised what was going on. She developed a taste for alcohol.
It was really sad. Yeah, it just wasn't her anymore, and I found it hard. Seeing her like that, I really wanted to help her, and I tried many times, and I feel that she just pushed me away, and sometimes I felt she didn't want to be helped.
I mean, I took care about her, and I tried everything in my power to get her on the straight and narrow, but, you know, the person has to care about themselves.
Katrina also started seeking companionship through the phone chat line Hot Gossip. Through this, she found parties, met men, and would often stay out all night.
And I've been stressed about it all the time. A number of times I've waited for her to come home or needed her to talk to her. Where was she? You know, I found out if she's okay. So it was horrible, actually.
At 19, Katrina became pregnant, and her mother hoped it would mean a new beginning.
You know, she always loved her son. She was very gentle with her son and cared about him. But she really didn't stay around very long after he was born. She kind of only maybe a month or two, and then she decided she wanted to go out again. She wasn't going to just stay there in the house for some reason.
Yeah, I just knew that there was a lot she wasn't telling me, and I knew that the people she was hanging around with and associating with weren't good people. They didn't have that love for her that I had for her, that genuine love that you have for your friend, that you want the best for them. And that's what I found hard, is that she couldn't see that.
When Katrina died, her son was only 2 years old. The homicide was described as a real whodunit, and to this day, the cause of death has never been publicly revealed, although it has been described as highly unusual. 3 suspect teams explored every possibility. Was a stranger responsible for Katrina's death? Or did the young mother die at the hands of someone from a long list of associates?
Just in terms of pieces of interest, I'd like to spend my stuff that Katrina's had on gossip, people in the neighbourhood, so that in the Moscow area, drug and alcohol issues, some gang issues, the fact that she wasn't getting a regular income. She was having to prepare herself to source alcohol and drugs for perhaps sexual favours and that sort of lifestyle.
Initial speculation focused on one male who she met through mental health services.
She had a better description, who was a lot older, similar lifestyle to Katrina. Source of some mental illness, people on drugs, and the cabbage young man following her death. So it wasn't
Oh, that's a good point.
a year later, we got only a picture on that particular male associate was had been to some degree that was responsible for the death.
Despite an extensive investigation, police weren't able to charge anyone with the murder. So in 2007, they took extraordinary measures.
Almost 2 years after the murder of woman Katrina Jeffries, police are offering
Oh,
a
this is-
$50,000 reward for help to find her killer. These police was one of the
Oh, that is just-
cases where we struggle with getting information from communities where they're also for the community. They involved suicide information in terms of who killed Katrina. We get a better coup down. Unfortunately, no one again came forward.
Although this reward is no longer offered, 14 years on, police are hoping that a new cold case investigation will finally lead to justice for Katrina.
Wow.
People need to be brave. People need to sure. People have daughters, sisters. Just really the chance that
In 2005, Katrina Jeffries was found dead in Auckland's Waikowhai Resort. 9 years later, in 2014, the case was reviewed and a new investigation, Operation Lyra, was launched.
There was 4 of us initially there, spent about 3 months reviewing the information, trying to get some jigsaw and see what areas we could develop.
Dopo sono fittato. Sì, che sei da capo, che si fa grosso.
It led us to some interesting information. It led us to this weekend, except the previous week, that might give us a key to who she was with, where she went.
The second investigation identified new persons of interest from the community. Through a new focus on Katrina's neighbourhood, police uncovered a violent serial predator.
56-year-old Auckland man has been sentenced to 19 years in prison following a string of violent physical and sexual offences against his former partners spanning 30 years. The judge described how 56-year-old Michael Tekuia regularly raped 2 of the women with callous entitlement. She went on to say that the lives of his 3 victims would have been one of utter misery.
We did apprehend or arrest someone from that community, and he did face some serious sexual charges for which he was convicted. However, his charges and his conviction was unreal.
méchant.
Stand by to see cars at more than 2. Goodbye for now then, but really we're just getting started. It's time, and alongside me today, a man who I'm always pleased to see join me in the commentary box, Anthony Davidson. When you look at their season so far...
А, Марджи, второй. Бочкам. Были лидер. Там внутри такой. Марджи бесшанный. Даже если не помню. Не выпишешь. Нифига. Что совместно?
DRS is being enabled this lap. We can use DRS when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. Job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far. Okay, no issues with the tyre wear for now. Keep taking care of them. Okay, this is your final lap of the race. Fantastic drive, that's just fantastic. Amazing, you deserve that race win. Well done, mate.
Последнюю сезон.
That's a spectacular. As to well, what an end to another fantastic week.
Blah, 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 blah. Короче. Финал.
После смерти Петруцио Виконт не пожелал мне подчиниться и провозгласил независимость от Миана. Очевидно, мои способности лидера не внушали ему доверия. Теперь нам стало известно, что Виконт обнаружил обломки какого-то странного летательного аппарата. Я ничего подобного никогда не видел. Что бы это ни было, это позволяет ему делать мощные змеевидные машины.
Вау. Пусть тормозит, тут вы. Да. Я начну еще, только нахуй включать не буду. А потом что сам. Далее продолжим завтра. Ну, спринт опять, блин. Это уже завтра.